Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
We will sing Jaya Ramakrishna Ramakrishna, which is the last song in the book. Rama Krishna Bolo Rama Ram. Jaya Rama Krishna Bolo Rama Ram. Jaya Rama Krishna Bolo Rama Ram. Jaya Rama Krishna Bolo Rama Ram.
Good morning. Today I will be reading passages from the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, written by known as Mahendranath Gupta, translated to English by Swami Nikhilananda. This is from one of the earliest conversations between M and Master Ramakrishna. In these passages, Master tells us how a householder can live and what to do to see God. M asks humbly, how, sir, may we fix our minds on God? Master, repeat God's name and sing His glories, and keep holy company, and now and then visit God's devotees and holy men. The mind cannot dwell on God if it is immersed day and night in worldliness, in worldly duties and responsibilities. It is most necessary to go into solitude now and then and think of God. To fix the mind in God, it's very difficult in the beginning unless one practices meditation in solitude. When a tree is young, it should be fenced all around. Otherwise, it may be destroyed by cattle. To meditate, you should withdraw within yourself or retire to a secluded corner or to the forest. And you should always discriminate between the real and the unreal. The God alone is real, the eternal substance. All else is unreal, that is impermanent. By discriminating thus, one should shake off impermanent objects from the mind. M. Humbly, how ought we live in the world. Master, do all your duties, but keep your mind on God. Live with all, with wife and children, father and mother, and serve them. Treat them as if they were very dear to you, but know in your heart of hearts that they do not belong to you. A maidservant in the house of a rich man performs all the household duties, but her thoughts are fixed on her own home in her native village. She brings up her master's children as if they were her own. She even speaks of them as my Rama and my Hari. But in her own mind, she knows very well that they do not belong to her at all. The tortoise moves about in the water, but can you guess where her thoughts are? There on the bank, where her eggs are lying. Do all your duties in the world, but keep your mind on God. If you enter the world without first cultivating love for God, you will be entangled more and more. You will be overwhelmed with its danger, its grief, its sorrows. And the more you think of worldly things, the more you will be attached to them. First, rub your hands with oil, then break open the jackfruit. Otherwise, they will be smeared with its sticky milk. First, secure the oil of divine love, and then set your hands to the duties of the world. But one must go into solitude to attain this divine love. To get butter from milk, you must let it set into curd in a secluded spot. If it is too much disturbed, milk won't turn into curd. Next, you must put aside all other duties, sit in a quiet spot, and churn the curd. Only then you get butter. Further, by meditating on God in solitude, the mind acquires knowledge, dispassion, and devotion. But the very same mind goes downwards if it dwells in the world. In the world, where is only one thought, woman and gold. The world is water and the mind is milk. If you pour milk into water, they become one. You cannot find the pure milk anymore. But turn the milk into curd and churn it into butter, then when that butter is placed in water, it will float. So practice spiritual discipline in solitude and obtain the butter of knowledge and love. Even if you keep that butter in the water of the world, the two will not mix. The butter will float. Together with this, you must practice discrimination. Woman and God is impermanent. God is only eternal substance. What does a man get with money? Food, clothes, and a dwelling place? Nothing more. You cannot realize God with its help. Therefore, money can never be goal of life. That is the process of discrimination. Do you understand? M. Yes, sir. I recently read a Sanskrit play called Prabodha Chandrodaya. It deals with discrimination. Master. Yes, discrimination about objects. Consider what is there in money or a beautiful body. Discriminate, you will find that even the beautiful body of woman consists of bones, flesh, fat, and other disagreeable things. Why should a man give up God and direct his attention to such things? Why should man forget God for their sake? M. Is it possible to see God? Master. Yes, certainly. Living in solitude now and then, repeating God's name and singing His glories, and discriminating between the real and the unreal, these are the means to employ to see Him. M. Under what conditions does one see God? Master. Cry to the Lord with an intensely yearning heart, and you will certainly see Him. People shed whole jug of tears for wife and children. They swim in tears for money. But who weeps for God? Cry to Him with a real cry. The Master sang. Cry to your mother Sama with a real cry, O mind. And how can she hold herself from you? How can Sama stay away? How can your mother Kali hold herself away? O mine, if you are in earnest, bring her an offering of bay leaves and hibiscus flowers. Lay at her feet your offering, and with it mingle the fragrant sandal paste of love. Jai Ramakrishna.
Sing the Beatitudes on page 44.
Come Good morning. I will read excerpts from Emmett Fox's book, The Sermon on the Mount, The Keys to Life. Jesus seeks to wean the heart from relying on outer things at all, either for pleasurable gratification or spiritual salvation, and to inculcate a new attitude of the mind altogether. This policy is set forth in the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. To be poor in spirit means to have emptied yourself of all desire, to exercise personal self-will, and to have renounced all preconceived ideas in the wholehearted search for God. It means to be willing to set aside your present habits of thought, your present views and prejudices, your present way of life, if necessary, to jettison anything and everything that can stand in the way of you finding God. We reject salvation because we have great possessions, including confidence in our own judgment, the ideas which we are familiar, spiritual pride, academic distinction, sentimental and material attachments, possessions of self-satisfaction and cocksureness. All of these possessions and habits of life that we have no desire to renounce keep us chained to the rock of suffering that is our exile from God. The poor in spirit have none of these because they have never had them or they have risen above them. They are ready to start again at the very beginning and learn life anew. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Mourning or sorrow is not a good thing in itself, for the will of God is that everyone should experience happiness and joyous success. Nevertheless, trouble and suffering are often useful because many people will not bother to learn the truth until driven to do so by sorrow or failure. Sorrow then becomes a relatively good thing. There is no need for man to have trouble if he seeks God first, for the trouble never need come. But if not, then come it must. Now the mourning will be a blessing in disguise, for though we will be comforted, and by comfort the Bible means to experience the presence of God, which is the end of all mourning. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. When you possess the spiritual meaning of this text, you have the secret of dominion, the secret of overcoming every kind of difficulty. It is literally the key of life. It is the Jesus Christ message reduced to a single sentence. The earth is the whole of your outer experience, and to inherit the earth means to have dominion over the outer experience. That is to say, to have the power to bring the conditions of your life into harmony and true success. This beatitude tells us how we may possess or govern to be masters of our own lives and destinies in the most unexpected way of all, by nothing less than meekness. The significance of the word meek in the Bible is a mental attitude that combines open-mindedness, faith in God, and realization that is the will of God is always something joyous and interesting and vital and much better than anything we could think for ourselves. This state of mind is perfect willingness to allow the will of God to come about in whatever way divine wisdom considers best, rather than in some particular way we have chosen for ourselves. There is an old saying that meekness compels God himself. If we desire to inherit the earth, we must absolutely acquire this meekness. Blessed are those which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Righteousness means in the Bible not merely right conduct, but also right thinking. And as we study the Sermon on the Mount, we find every clause reiterating this great truth, that outside things are but an expression of our inner thoughts and beliefs, and that we have dominion or power over our thoughts to think as we will, and thus indirectly we make or mar our lives by the way in which we think. If you want health, you must think health, and remember that thinking health does not mean merely thinking a healthy body, important as that is, but it also includes thinking peace and contentment and goodwill to all. Have a mental stock taking of your life and see if you are thinking wrongly in some area of your mind. Is there someone you have not forgiven? Are you indulging in any kind of political, racial, or religious sectarian hatred or contempt? Is there some kind of jealousy left in your heart? If there is, cut it out at all costs. This beatitude, Jesus tells us not to be discouraged because we have not overcome everything all at once or because our progress seems slow. If we are not making progress, we can examine our lives and pray for wisdom and guidance in the living action of the Holy Spirit upon us. We need only to work steadily, and if we are wholehearted, surely we will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. This beatitude is clear and obvious and a vital bearing of the principle that shows us that the thing that really matters is to be merciful in your thoughts. Kind actions coupled with unkind thoughts are hypocrisy dictated by fear or desire for self-glory or motive. They are counterfeits and they neither bless neither the giver nor the recipient. On the other hand, the true thought about your fellow man blesses him spiritually, mentally, and materially, and blesses you too. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. The peacemakers spoken of in this beatitude are those who make or bring about this true peace or serenity in their own souls. For it is they who surmount this limitation and actually become, not merely remain, potentially the children of God. The condition of mind is the objective in which Jesus gives us all instruction. Peace I leave with you, peace I give to you. Let your heart not be troubled or afraid. As long as there is any fear or resentment or trouble in your heart, as long as you lack serenity or peace, it is not possible to attain very much. To be a peacemaker in the usual sense of composing the quarrels of other people is an excellent thing, but difficult. By interfering in other people's strife, it is easier to make things worse than better. Personal opinion almost certainly enters your effort and is likely to be wrong. If you merely bring compromise from motives of self-interest or some kind of coercion, then the trouble has only been patched up on the surface and there is not true peace. Once you understand the power of prayer, you will be able to heal many quarrels in the true way, without speaking at all. And the silent thought of the power of love and wisdom will cause trouble to melt away imperceptibly. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are ye when men persecute you and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake. Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so persecuted the prophets were before you. Jesus tells us again and again that the will of God for us is harmony, peace, and joy. He says that the peacemakers do this by praying in meekness, obtain prosperity, inherit the earth, have their mornings turned to joy, and whatever they shall ask the Father in this manner of teaching, he will do. Yet here we are being told that it is blessed to be persecuted, and for that we will triumph. This is very startling and also very correct. Only we have to understand that the source of all persecution is none other than our own selves. No outside persecutor, but only our lower selves. When we find righteousness or right thinking difficult, we are strongly tempted to hold on to wrong thoughts about some situation, a person, or ourselves and give way to fear, anger, despondency. Then we are being persecuted for righteousness' sake, in an extremely fortunate situation because in such moments we advance. Every spiritual treatment involves a tussle with our lower selves, which wishes to indulge in old habits of thought. All the great ones who ultimately overcame did so by such struggles with themselves. This combat with the lower self has to be fought sooner or later, and the sooner it is over and done with, the better. So, relatively speaking, they are great blessings. Thank you.
This is a Bengali song addressed to God as the Divine Mother. The devotee says, I am child of the Divine Mother. I have nothing to fear and nothing to worry about. When I see darkness, Mother holds my hands and gives me strength. The rest of the song is an elaboration of this theme and encourages us to look upon ourselves as children of God as mother. মাঝে নারামি আছি ভাবনা কি
Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. The two readings we had today and the music, the two songs, they remind us of some of the very important things as we pursue our spiritual lives, as we pursue our quest towards the truth, towards the divine, towards God. A lot of these ideas that get expressed through the readings and through the songs that we have on the services, not all of them are new in the sense that we haven't heard of them before. But many of them remain hidden in our heart. And as we get busy with just the things that we have to do on a daily basis, our duties and responsibilities, that we need periodic reminders, periodic way of connecting to these insights, these truths, which are already there in our hearts. And that form of connecting internally is really what the word Antar Yoga means. Antar is inside, yoga is joining. Sometimes I am asked by many, especially newcomers, that do we conduct any spiritual retreats? And what oftentimes the intent behind it is because a popular idea of a retreat is usually at least a day spent doing intensely trying to focus on our ideals, or sometimes on a weekend and so on. And the reason we have this Antar Yoga once a month was partly in response to this questions I get periodically, whether we have retreats. So certainly the once a month Antar Yoga we have provides opportunities through these readings and music to connect with the internal, so Antar Yoga. But I think it's important to recognize that it's not just once a month event. In fact, every service in every place of worship, not just at Vedanta Center, anywhere, all I think religious and spiritual programs held in any place of worship are a kind of a retreat, because we get pulled outside to deal with the external world with many things that are important. But oftentimes this going out and getting in touch with the world outside oftentimes takes us away from the real core of our own existence. And a periodic retreat, going back and touching that core, is important. And it's not enough to do it just once a month or once a week. And therefore every service, every religious service is a kind of a retreat. But also, those of us who have a daily practice of prayer and meditation or a spiritual study, I think those are also occasions of retreat. So I think it'll helpful to look at the word retreat in a much broader sense. Because when we try to pray or meditate daily, the act of prayer or meditation, by definition, is really to retreat from the world. I cannot be busy with the 10 different things and have any kind of a meaningful prayer and meditation, because both of these, worship also, prayer, worship, meditation, all of these three primary practices in spiritual life, if they have to be meaningful, if we have to practice them in the way they were intended to be practiced, then it does involve retreating, even if temporarily, even if for a few minutes, to focus on things that may not seem to be of immediate relevance or immediate importance, because sometimes we find it easier to put off our prayer or meditation, is that can wait because this is something more urgent. And then as we grow older, we see that things which we see as urgent, there's just no end to it. You might think, oh, I'm just going to finish this and then I'm going to just focus on my spirit. It never happens. One thing ends and then something else comes up and something else comes up. And therefore, at some point, we'll have to say, no, at least let me make some time in the course of my daily schedule to find time for these practices. If I see myself as a genuine spiritual seeker, if I see myself as a devotee of God, if I see that spirituality is not just a fad, a curiosity, an interesting way to spend a few minutes every day, but it's something which I recognize is vitally important, then we'll have to find a way, we'll have to find a time, and then recognize no matter what. I would think most of us, most of the time, there isn't anything so important in our lives that it cannot wait for a few minutes, that it can't be done after half an hour. There is no text message that is so important that it cannot wait for half an hour or 45 minutes. And therefore, that in itself becomes a discipline, that I'm going to now, the next few minutes, whether you are attending a service or the satsang at the Vedanta Center, or you are doing your own personal prayer or meditation at home, to have that enormous courage and strength to switch off your phone for a while and say, now I'm going to retreat inside. And what we learn by retreating inside and finding these hidden gems in our own heart sometimes teach us more, energize us more than continually reading new books. Sometimes we tend to think, the more I read, the wiser I will become. I don't want to discount the importance of reading. It's definitely helpful, but it's equally important to see what happens after the reading is done. Sure, after I read, some of the ideas in that book will resonate with me, will make an impression in my mind. And then, of course, that impression in the mind remains. But if I then don't pause to reflect over it, to think about it some more, that impression is just going to remain. And then I keep on reading more books, more impressions are going to come in. And the earlier impressions are just going to get buried deep down, deep down. And then we have to be our own archaeologists, like you, to kind of dig a little bit and find out what's there. Otherwise, just find buried a bunch of ideas. And if we have an ideas and if we never use it, they're pretty useless. I think then reading becomes just a waste of time. And therefore, reading is helpful, but it can be fruitful only if it is followed by reflection. And then the next key step is, when I reflect over an idea or a thought that has caught my imagination after listening to a piece of music or a reading, it's important for me then to try to relate that insight to my own life. every one of us is a very unique person. No two amongst us have an identical life story. And only when we apply these insights to our own situation will there be any real transformation in our lives. Otherwise, our intellectual life will go in. Our intellectual life and our daily life can be just two parallel lines, not meeting at all. And then that it doesn't help. So if my spiritual study, the word that is used in Sanskrit often for spiritual study is swadhyaya. Adhyaya means study, but swa means self. So swadhyaya literally translated becomes self-study. And self-study is not just, well, we are all, every one of us studies by oneself. So you might say, well, every study is a self-study. Not really. The way the word self-study or swadhyaya is used in the Vedanta tradition is applying what we study to the self. It's not enough to say, oh, this is what I've studied and this is what the world should do. This is what my family should do. This is what my friends should do. No. If I read something, first I must say what I should be doing to it, how I should apply it in my life. And it's quite likely that many of the things we might read in the scriptures may not be relevant to us. Clearly, because the scriptures are addressing a broad spectrum of people with different needs and different needs. And my needs are plenty, but they are still a small cross-section of the needs of the entire humanity. And therefore, when I read something from a holy text, some of the things will just strike a chord and say, yeah, this makes sense. But some of the things like, okay, yeah, it makes sense, but there's something that doesn't feel relevant, which is okay. Oh, so this is one important lesson also. Not everything that we read, even if it's a very sacred scripture, needs to be relevant to me right now. But just because it is not relevant to me now, doesn't mean it's not going to be relevant to me 5 years later or 10 years later. And we see that often happening in our lives. Something suddenly strikes and say, oh yeah, I read about it 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So these impressions that we collect are important, even if they are not immediately relevant. But what about the things that are relevant to us right now? Well, if it is relevant to me, then, and if I want my reading, my reflection, my practices to change me in some way, in a positive way, then I must relate it to myself and see how I can put it into practice. Swami Vivekananda said that I need to get this correct, but often an ounce of practice is worth 1,000 tons of theory. So that's very important. So no matter how much we read, only we apply it and then start practicing it, even a teeny weeny bit of it, that has more value. And so that is how lives change. If we want to see how we have changed as a result of our spiritual practices, that change will not happen only through reading. That change will not happen only through attending your church or your temple or your synagogue regularly. And that's great to do it. But ultimately, the change will occur only when what I have read, what makes sense to me, is applied to my life. And then we can ask really very concrete, tangible questions to ourselves. Because sometimes these teachings can be very abstract. It's good to say, be kind, be merciful, and so on. That's great. But then I must say, what does it mean exactly? Waking up tomorrow morning, what does it mean to be merciful when I deal with my members of my family, my friends, or at my workplace? So that's the kind of a details that we will have to work out ourselves. And we can be as concrete as we would want to be. How should this teaching influence the way I think about myself, about the world? How does this teaching influence the way I speak with other people? How does it influence the way I behave? How does it influence the way I do my work? Only when we ask these questions to ourselves and find whatever answers we get, and that's the time to kind of test it out in a marketplace, so to speak. Let's say when a new product is launched by any companies, well, you have to test it and see whether that's what you're. I'm speaking a very not having any experience in this marketing. I'm just speaking out a marketing language. But ultimately, you have to test your product and see whether that's what works. And in some ways, although marketing is not really the right word for this, but how do we know that my understanding of these texts it works? It has made me a better human being, and I won't know it unless I actually test it in my dealing with the world around me. And so all of these spiritual practices, whether it's your worship, prayer, meditation, all of these things will be really tested when I come in touch with this world itself. So the world is a testing ground. It's a way to test my understanding of it, and it's also a way to test myself. And so Swami Brahmananda's words come to mind when someone asked him, what is spiritual life? And he said 3 words: struggle, struggle, struggle. So spiritual life is more than simply singing and reading and then feeling good about it for a few minutes and then getting back into the world and being the same old person and then coming back a week later and doing some more singing and more reading. And that doesn't help. We'll need to kind of change. Change is the name of the game, if you like. And that's why today is according to the lunar calendar in India, it's a day of Gudi Padwa. It's called among people in Maharashtra in India, and then Ugadi. And so this is one among the many New Years that we have in India. It's kind of nice some ways to have these many New Years, although clearly mostly we just see 1st of January, the Gregorian calendar, as the New Year. But it's nevertheless, it's good to even have this idea, even though it's followed in a smaller circles, about the different New Years, is to see that every day can be a new beginning. Every moment can be a new beginning. Because sometimes, especially as we get older, there is sometimes a tendency to feel, oh, I should have done this long back. Now it's too late for me to change. But it's never too late. As they say, God always allows a U-turn at any moment. And so a continual renewal is called for. Never to feel a sense of failure. There is no failure in spiritual life. The failure is only when I give up. So long as I don't give up, so long as I have that faith that no matter how often I fall down, I'm going to get up and start walking. It is to such a persevering, brave soul that help comes in very unexpected ways. And it is that help that we call God's grace. So the Antar Yoga and all the programs we have at the Vedanta Center, in general, as I said, all the spiritual services held in different ways, in different parts of the world, in different traditions, all of these are a way to call us back to our true selves. And it's in that spirit, if we, all of us, especially here, those of you who have been so earnestly and sincerely participating in Vedanta programs over the years, I would encourage you to look on every visit to the Vedanta Center, whether it's for the satsang or for the meditations and arati or for for the scripture class, or whenever we have pujas and so on, try to look upon every one of these visits as an opportunity to connect with the inner self, to go deep within, form of a retreat itself. Yeah, that's the thought I had. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Next Sunday, we'll have a festival, the Rama festival, to celebrate the birthday of Rama. And as we do every year, there'll be a brief worship, there'll be meditation, there'll be music, and a reflection on the life and teachings of Rama. And then followed by the annual meeting. And then potluck lunch. So feel free to cook your favorite dishes. If you want ideas about what and how, you can speak with Henna after the service. So that will be the program next Sunday. We begin at 11 o'clock as we do every Sunday. So that will be Rama Festival. On Wednesday, we will continue with the study of Narada Bhakti Sutras. Hopefully they are saying it might be there may be some snow. I hope it's not so bad as to affect our Tuesday and Wednesday programs. But if they do, if you find it snowing, if the road driving is not safe, or if you feel it, well, you're not sure whether it's safe or not, or you feel it, you could do it. In any case, if the situation is not that good, please check the calendar on the website, or if you are connected with Facebook and Twitter, look at the center's pages there in case there is any cancellation. Or on channel 5, I think, also they sometimes put if there is a cancellation. So there are these many different ways to know in case the program that is announced is cancelled. So we'll now have the prayer and then we will have Sarvamangala. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
We will sing Sarvamangala on page 5.
Om